have impacted me at that time. But I would have been happy to pay more taxes.
But why would anyone want to
Sam Seder was a guest on the Patrick Bet-David show with Patrick Bet-David and his sidekick Adam, where they talked about taxes. But not just taxes, but what should be the highest marginal tax rate for the richest people. So like we just heard, we're going to hear a lot of fake laughter and BS talking points that sidekick Adam even admits comes from someone who was giving a talk on how to spread propaganda defending the richest people, dragons, hoarding all the gold. But Sam Seder argues, if you're actually for trying to make America great again, you would probably talking about the time when the highest marginal rate was 90%. Now, that doesn't mean all your money was getting taxed at 90%. Just everything over what's equivalent to today's money, $3 million. Sidekick Adam would even use Ronald Reagan's fake talking points, but Sam Seder would shut that down. Let's watch these clips and we'll chop it up every now and then.
Together. Money was so freaking cheap for so long that we have to pay a price for it. And now you're looking at the economy. It looked like everything was good, but a big part of it was fake, Sam. We had a lot of fake success the last few years.
Well, I mean, look, I'm just measuring on, again, the way I view things is what's going to make things better for the most amount of people. And in terms of like, it being in favor of the capitalists, I would also change our tax policy. So, I mean, I would claw some of that back, quite a bit of it back.
What would you do?
I would return to the tax policy when we had the greatest, sort of the widest economic expansion shared by more people as a percentage of our population than any other time in this country, which was in the 50s and the 60s. And I would return to the tax rates more or less there. So your top tax rate at that time was 90%, top marginal rate, for every dollar over $470,000 you would earn. So that would be equivalent to around $3 million today. I think we should return to that type of tax.
You want it to go as high as 90% at the top marginal tax?
At the top marginal tax rate. So understand, that only kicks in with every dollar above $3 million.
I hear you. And yeah, I mean, that's the famous Reagan situation where I think it was anything over $200,000 at that point. This might have been in the 40s, that he would only do 2 movies a year because he'd get paid $100,000 per movie, and then he wouldn't even do a third movie because he would only get 10% of the revenue because he's like, I'm not doing another movie.
Yeah.
So when Reagan
started telling that story, you know who he was working for when he started telling that story, right? He was going around, I think it was working for GE, trying to convince people not to get Medicare for all. I mean, if Reagan could have gotten 3 movies or 5 movies, he would have done it. He was working with chimps. He would have been happy to do that for his career, believe me.
It was a lie, and they know it was a lie. You even hear PBD say he was working for General Electric. They know that was just campaign nonsense. It was just trying to fight against everyone having healthcare. This is what they're using as a defense. They're using the argument of Ronald Reagan lying about not being able to do more movies because he didn't want to get taxed. Now watch as Sidekick Adam talk about how he was given specific words to use in these type of arguments. Even saying entitlement program like Social Security. What do you mean entitlement? If people pay into it their whole lives, of course they're entitled to it. But they use entitlement as a weapon, not just as describing what it is. It's supposed to feel like some people are getting over on the system because they're entitled to it.
Smart with your money and just being wasteful. The government is clearly fucking wasteful. Where you are correct is that most retirees and most Americans do appreciate Social Security, do appreciate the entitlement programs that come with this country, whether it's Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, no doubt. But that doesn't mean the government is good at spending money. We're seeing that Social Security is about to go bankrupt.
The trust fund is going to be
the trust fund by 2023. And yes, I just had this conversation literally 2 days ago in DC where he kept using the word bankrupt, bankrupt, bankrupt. I said, what does that mean?
Who kept using that word?
This was
Which Republican used it?
It wasn't even a Republican. He was sort of a Social Security financial advisor, expertise type of guy. But I said, what do you keep saying bankrupt? Is that meaning that retirees will not be receiving benefits? He goes, no, they'll probably be slashed by 25%. You use 20, so we can, cut the baby in half here. But how familiar are you with the 3-legged stool of retirement?
Of course, yes.
Okay, so it used to be you had 3 avenues to retire. You had pensions, which do they even exist anymore for 90% of people?
More as a defined contribution than defined.
They're not very popular these days. I don't know how many people here have pensions. You have Social Security, which was never meant to be a retirement program. It was an insurance policy if you live too long, which basically Americans are now. Or you have your personal savings, which is the 401k. We can argue the merits of 401ks and Roth IRAs, what have you. But Social Security should not be keeping Americans afloat for 30 years of their life.
Well, that's the failure of the private industry, isn't it?
Why is it a failure of the private industry?
Well, I mean, Social Security is maintained. The idea that we're leaning on the government stool because the other two have failed. That's a function of private industry.
Isn't that a function of just the average person understanding how money works and saving money, investing and doing it properly, versus the government or institutions?
60% of the country lives paycheck to paycheck. How are they supposed to save this money?
They can't even consider that most people don't have a $500 emergency fund because they can't afford it. But you know who can afford it? The richest people whose wealth went up by billions of dollars in the last 5 years. Not just tens of millions or hundreds of millions, but tens and hundreds of billions of dollars. They're arguing that people should be worth $400 billion while there's homeless people. And they're arguing that if you get old enough where you can't work, it's all your fault. Not the billionaires who are robbing the American people by cutting these funds. Because at the end of the day, they're trying to privatize it. They want these public funds for their own profit. They want to be in control of how everyone lives. And because they bribe politicians as a part of their business, they already do control the world. The minimum wage hasn't moved in decades, but yet the richest people have gotten billions of dollars richer. That is in no way a mistake. It was a purposeful plan by the rich for the rich. And a major part of that plan is bribing and pushing propaganda through platforms like the Patrick Bet David podcast, with stooges like Sidekick Adam here. As he said, they're constantly feeding them with buzzwords to use on their platforms to confuse people. They want to get people who rely on these programs to turn against them because they think Elon Musk or the other richest people in the world will come to save them. But that's not true. Private industries are only there to benefit the top people. Walmart is not there to service its own workers, only the owners of Walmart. Billionaires create poverty. They need it to scare people into taking the worst jobs for the least amount of pay.
Well, how are they spending their money, I guess, is the biggest question. How many people have credit card debt? How many people? You just said when you took out a mortgage, you said, I'm an actor. What was the rate? You're like, I don't fucking even know. You should know.
Well, I was making so much money that
I don't give a shit how much money you're making, Sam. You should know what your mortgage rate is.
But, I mean, I didn't remember what it was in 1998, but I mean, I know what it is now. But I mean, but I was making so much money, but I was making, I was in the top, I don't know if I was in the top 1% at that time, but probably pretty close.
So let me ask you a question.
And I was a single guy who had just gone from making, to $22,000 a year to all of a sudden making that.
How much were you making
in a week
at that point?
I mean, I was making a lot of money.
Now, how comfortable at that point would you have been paying 90% in taxes?
Sure.
So you actually want to pay 90% in tax?
No.
PBD and Sidekick Adam only care about their own pockets because they strive to be the dragons that hoard all the gold. They don't care about the rest of the world, which is cool, but then you can't complain about crime or nothing because the biggest indication of crime is poverty. If you want to get rid of crime, you have to get rid of poverty first. If you want to make America great again, you have to go back to when the tax system actually worked for the people. That doesn't even mean there was no rich people. It just means there's not obscene wealth. People worth $400 billion. You know what's $1 billion? It's 1,000 millions. Think how many thousands you have in your bank account. 3, 5, 8, 15,000, 25,000. If you have 50,000 in your bank account, shout out to you. But the people that they're defending have 1,000,000. That's just 1 billion. Some of these guys have 250 billion, 400 billion, 300 billion. They couldn't even spend that if they wanted to. That's why they're just wasting money on rockets instead of eradicating poverty, instead of ending world hunger, because those type of issues benefit them because it drives fear in the hearts of regular people. And that's what dragons do.
No. Let's be clear.
That?
I think it should be 90% over for the every dollar you make over $3 million.
Yeah.
That would not have impacted me at that time. But I would have been happy to pay more taxes.
But why would anyone want to?
You know why I'm laughing? Because it's always let's tax the people a little richer than me. It's always let's tax the guys
it was
that
a lot richer. But I'm just going back.
If you're saying 22 a week, you were making $1,098,000. That's a lot of money.
No. Well, it wasn't 20.
You said 22 a week. That's $1 million a year.
No. That was the year before. I mean,
but you're making money.
I was making a bunch of money. But I'm just going back to when we had the Great Compression, which was when we had the least wealth inequality in this country. Mm-hmm. We had the GDP was, consistent with where, on our trajectory, but it was spread out. It wasn't like this. Essentially,
Rob,
it was more spread out. It's called the Great Compression, and I'm just using that figure. I mean, look, if it's going to be 85% over 3 million or 85% over 4 million, I'm just basing it on what was the most successful economic era of this country.
Why not do 90% over $250,000?
I mean, if the numbers bear it out, I'm agnostic as to that. Again, I'm just pegging it on when we had the most success in this country in terms of our economy.
I appreciate that you're pointing out the success, but
I don't care. It doesn't matter about the most success. That's only a talking point we use to convince people who don't know what they're talking about. It's all a rules. It's all a game they're playing. So they don't actually want to go back to that time because it just means higher taxes for the richest of people, which is them. So it's a lie that they only tell to the poorest of people that support them because they have to blame somebody. It's a lie they tell so that poor people would blame poorer people than them instead of the richest people who bribe politicians to make sure the world is screwed, just so that they can profit another billion.
Right now, the top marginal tax rate federally is 37, 39. Okay, you do realize how shocking it is to say, all right, rather than go from 37 to 39, how about 40? How about 50?
How many?
You want to go to 90?
How many people do you assume? How many people do you assume would be touched by that tax? Would be implicated?
Top 1%. Look at this number right here. Share of total income taxes paid.
Less.
The top 1% in this country pay 42.3%. The bottom 50% only pay 2.3%.
The number that they're using is fake because that's just raw numbers. If we talk about percentage of income, it's way higher for everyone who makes less than 50,000. If you make 40 grand a year, 15 of that is taxed. So you're really only making 25 and you still have to pay rent and live. If you're a multimillionaire, after you pay your taxes, that doesn't really affect your life. So you're not really paying a high percentage of your actual income. It's a high number, sure, but it's a fake stat they're using. And if you're a billionaire, that number is even faker because billionaires will pay millions of dollars for a team of lawyers and accountants to not pay taxes. And that number is not accounted for. They do everything in their power to make sure they don't pay back into the system that might potentially help somebody else. So showing percentages doesn't show us the percentage of their income that they're actually paying. This is how you lie with statistics.
So 150 million people are paying nothing in taxes.
Right.
And you want to keep the 1% paying more and more and
I think
more
it's
and
actually
more?
even less than 1%, to be honest with you. I think we're talking about 0.05%.
Sure,
but let's tax them even more.
I specifically want to make it illegal to be almost as wealthy as you. Not quite, but a little bit more. Like I want to make it not illegal. You're not going to go to jail.
So nobody can be no billionaires. No billionaires in America.
Absolutely.
Sam,
100%.
Why? Don't you want America to be known for greatness, for innovation, for capitalism, for all the amazing things that we've done in this country?
My definition of
you want to go to like Nordic socialism.
My definition of greatness is different from yours.
Agreed. He wanted the top marginal tax rate over 3 million to be 90%. And then after 200 million, 99%. And if somehow you go past that, after 500 million, 100%. Because they're using the fact that people have less money as a reason to cut Social Security and Medicare. They're using the fact that people are struggling as a reason to continue the struggle, as a reason to keep a foot on people's necks. All so that somebody can get their 5th yacht. And I'll go even further than that. All studio apartments should be free of charge. It doesn't make sense that there are homeless people and empty studio apartments and billionaires all in the same state, all in the same country, especially when you have people like Mark Zuckerberg buying islands in Hawaii and making full-on bunkers for himself.
News of the bunker first broke last year in an extensive article on Wired.com headlined, "Inside Mark Zuckerberg's Top Secret Hawaii Compound." It described a large, self-sufficient underground bunker with what appeared to be a blast-resistant door. In a rare interview released last week with Bloomberg's The Circuit, Zuckerberg was asked about it.
You do have a bunker there. Is there something you know that we don't?
No, I think that's just like a little shelter under, and it's like a basement.
A little shelter. What are you worried about?
It's a basement.
H&N obtained the county's planning documents that show a nearly 4,500 square foot underground storm shelter. That's about the size of an NBA basketball court and about 2/3 the square footage of Iolani Palace. It also shows a tunnel connecting the shelter to the ground level.
Billionaires only exist to exploit the rest of the world for their own greed and gain. If you disagree, let me know in the comment section what would be a better plan. If you like this type of content and how I'm moderating these debates, hit the like, subscribe, and let me know what you think about all this in the comment section. Peace.